For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On the evening of October 28, 1995, 9-year-old Rowan Pike and his younger brother, both full of the day's excitement, left their family in the bustling Halloween's crowds at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Taking a familiar shortcut through a restricted service path, they were headed towards their hotel shuttle. They never arrived. Despite an immediate and extensive search by park security and later, a nationwide missing persons alert, the Pike brothers vanished without a trace from the sprawling amusement park, leaving behind only unanswered questions. For 22 agonizing years, their parents lived with the unbearable mystery of their son's disappearance, enduring an endless cycle of hope and despair. Then, in 2017, a startling and unexpected discovery was made. 2 faded admission wristbands, matted in thick silt, were pulled from the murky depths of the Frontier Trail Lagoon. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Rowan Pike and his brother. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. The year was 1995, and autumn had transformed Cedar Point, Sandusky, Ohio, into a vibrant spectacle for its annual Halloween's. Throngs of families, drawn by the crisp October air and the thrill of costumed characters amidst towering roller coasters, filled the pathways. Laughter and the mechanical roar of rides created a cacophony of festive energy, a seemingly idyllic backdrop for a family outing. It was within this bustling environment that 2 young brothers, Rowan Pike, aged 9, and his younger sibling, embarked on what would become their final known adventure. Rowan, with the boundless energy characteristic of his age, and his brother, equally eager, were enjoying a typical day at the amusement park. Their parents had planned a memorable trip, and the boys were immersed in the excitement, navigating the crowds with a sense of childhood wonder. As evening approached and the park lights began to glow, the family prepared to depart. The boys, seeking a quicker route back to their hotel shuttle, decided to cut through a lesser-used service path, a shortcut they believed would shave precious minutes off their journey. The path, often overlooked by the general public, seemed innocuous enough amidst the overwhelming crowds of the Halloween's, where thousands moved in a constant, flowing stream. In such a dense environment, 2 small figures could easily become indistinguishable from the multitude, or simply slip from immediate view. However, the minutes stretched into an hour, then 2, and the brothers never appeared at the designated shuttle pickup point. The initial flicker of concern in their parents quickly escalated into a cold dread. Calls to park security were made, frantic searches initiated, and the festive atmosphere of Cedar Point began to curdle into a chilling backdrop for a burgeoning nightmare. Park staff, initially optimistic, soon joined the parents in a widening search, their faces reflecting the growing panic. By nightfall, the grim reality had set in. Rowan Pike and his younger brother had vanished without a trace from one of America's most popular amusement parks. The immediate searches, though extensive, yielded no clues, no witnesses who had seen anything amiss, and no explanation for their sudden disappearance. The Pike family's anguish became a palpable weight, and the public, gripped by the unsettling news, struggled to comprehend how 2 young boys could simply disappear into thin air from such a public, supposedly safe, venue. The mystery of their fate began its long, agonizing vigil. The immediate aftermath of the brothers' disappearance plunged Cedar Point into a state of frantic, albeit initially uncoordinated, activity. Park security, accustomed to managing lost children and minor incidents, quickly found themselves overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. Their initial sweeps of the park, focusing on rides and public areas, yielded nothing. As the hours passed without a trace of Rowan and his younger brother, the local authorities were formally notified. Sandusky Police Department officers, quickly joined by deputies from the Erie County Sheriff's Office, converged on the amusement park, their presence a stark contrast to the festive lights. An intensive search began, with the service path and its immediate surroundings designated as Ground Z. Row, investigators meticulously combed the narrow, often overgrown track that the boys had intended to use as a shortcut. Every inch was scrutinized for any anomaly. A discarded item of clothing, a scuff mark in the dirt, a disturbed patch of foliage that might indicate passage or struggle. Beyond the path, search teams fanned out into less trafficked areas of the park, including maintenance access roads, employee-only zones, and the perimeters of the various lagoons and water features. The sheer scale of Cedar Point, coupled with the immense crowds of Halloweekends, presented an immediate and formidable challenge. Footprints were indistinguishable in the churned earth, and the constant flow of people meant any potential evidence could have been trampled or inadvertently removed. Hundreds of park guests and employees who had been in the vicinity of the service path or the boys' last known locations were interviewed. The process was arduous. Memories were hazy, details conflicted, and the general chaos of a theme park made reliable witness accounts scarce. Many recalled seeing children, but none could definitively identify Rowan and his brother, let alone recall anything suspicious. Investigators faced the frustrating reality that in a sea of thousands, two small boys could vanish with astonishing ease. Despite the exhaustive efforts, the initial investigation quickly ran into dead ends. There was no ransom demand, no physical evidence of an abduction, no struggle, and crucially, no bodies found within the park or its immediate environs. The absence of any tangible clue left investigators with little to pursue. The case, devoid of forensic leads or credible witnesses, began to stall. As the official search slowed, the public's attention intensified. Media outlets broadcast the brothers' faces across Ohio and beyond, desperate pleas for information filling airwaves and newspapers. Missing person posters, bearing the hopeful smiles of Rowan and his brother, appeared on every lamppost and storefront in Sandusky. Hotlines received countless calls, each offering a potential sighting or theory, but every lead proved to be a false hope. The initial surge of public support and frantic searching gradually gave way to a chilling silence, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a profound sense of loss. The initial fervor surrounding the disappearance of Rowan Pike and his younger brother could not be sustained indefinitely. As weeks turned into months, the intensive search phases, which had mobilized hundreds, gradually wound down. The dedicated task force, once a hive of activity, saw its members redeployed to other active cases. The police files, once slim and hopeful, grew thicker with dead ends, witness statements that led nowhere, and forensic reports that confirmed only the absence of evidence. The case, despite its high profile and the public's enduring fascination, began its slow, inevitable descent into the cold case archives. The official designation meant that, while the investigation was never truly closed, it was no longer an active, daily pursuit. Leads would be followed if they emerged, but the proactive search had ceased. For the Pike family, however, the passage of time offered no such respite. 22 years would elapse, each one a fresh iteration of the initial horror. Birthdays came and went, holidays were muted, and the annual anniversaries of that fateful Halloweekends in 1995 brought renewed waves of sorrow and unanswered questions. The boys' rooms remained, perhaps subtly changed over the years, but always imbued with their absence. The parents lived in a perpetual state of limbo, clinging to a fading hope while grappling with the agonizing uncertainty of their children's fate. The public, too, never entirely forgot. The story of the brothers who vanished from Cedar Point became a local legend, a chilling cautionary tale whispered through generations. Periodically, the case would be revisited by Cedar Point's own security teams or by a cold case unit within the Sandusky Police Department. These reviews, often spurred by new forensic technologies or simply a fresh pair of eyes on old evidence, would offer a fleeting glimmer of hope. Detective work involved re-examining old interviews, cross-referencing databases, and even employing age progression software to generate images of what Rowan and his brother might look like as adults. Yet each review, each renewed effort, ultimately yielded the same result: silence. The thick files would be closed once more, returned to their shelf, awaiting a breakthrough that seemed increasingly unlikely. The enduring mystery was perhaps the most unsettling aspect. How could two young children disappear from a bustling amusement park, surrounded by thousands, without a single credible witness or a shred of physical evidence? Theories abounded. Abduction by a stranger who expertly melted into the crowd, a tragic accident that left no trace, or even a more sinister plot. Without bodies, without a confession, without any definitive clue, these speculations festered, offering no comfort, only further torment. For over 2 decades, the fate of Rowan Pike and his younger brother remained one of Ohio's most perplexing and heartbreaking unsolved mysteries, a void in the fabric of their family and community. 22 years had passed since the Pike brothers vanished, and for the vast majority of that time, the case remained a static entry in the cold files. Life at Cedar Point, meanwhile, continued its cyclical rhythm of bustling seasons and quiet off-seasons. It was during one such off-season, in the early spring of 2017, that a routine maintenance operation was underway, far removed from any conscious connection to the decades-old mystery. Park crews were conducting their annual inspection of water features, a painstaking process of draining, cleaning, and repairing the intricate systems that powered the park's many attractions. The focus of this particular day's work was the Frontier Trail Lagoon, a serpentine body of water that meandered through a themed section of the park. Unlike the more accessible public waterways, the lagoon's depths were largely obscured by murky water and accumulated silt, a natural consequence of 2 decades of operation. Its banks were not typically patrolled with the same vigilance as guest areas, and its purpose was more aesthetic than recreational. It was here, beside a pump inlet, an unassuming piece of infrastructure designed to circulate and filter the lagoon's water, that the discovery was made. The area was rarely disturbed, making it a repository for whatever the currents might deposit over time. A maintenance worker, methodically clearing debris from around the inlet, noticed an unusual resistance in the thick, black silt. Digging deeper, his trowel unearthed 2 faded objects, matted together with mud and fine sediment. They were small, circular, and initially indistinguishable from other forgotten detritus. But as the silt was carefully washed away, their true nature became disturbingly clear: 2 admission wristbands. Their colors, once vibrant, were now muted and stained, but the distinct pattern and material were unmistakable to anyone familiar with Cedar Point's entry passes. The find was immediately reported to park security, who, despite the routine nature of maintenance discoveries, recognized the potential significance. A closer examination confirmed the chilling possibility. The faded wristbands bore the specific design and color scheme used during the 1995 Halloweekends, the very period when Rowan Pike and his younger brother had disappeared. The location, so close to the service path the boys were last known to have used, amplified the gravity of the find. For 22 years, the lagoon had held its secret, and now, in a moment of routine upkeep, it had yielded a tangible, undeniable link to the past. The cold case file, long dormant and gathering dust, was abruptly reopened. The wristbands, small and unassuming, had become the most significant piece of evidence in a mystery that had tormented a family and baffled investigators for over 2 decades. The discovery of the wristbands immediately triggered a new, intense phase of forensic examination, breathing life into a case long considered dormant. The delicate, silt-matted artifacts were transported to a specialized laboratory, where forensic scientists began a meticulous analysis. Their objective was not merely to confirm the band's authenticity, which had already been established by park officials, but to extract any trace evidence that could speak to the boys' final moments. Under powerful microscopes, technicians scrutinized the faded plastic for DNA, though the likelihood of recoverable genetic material after 2 decades submerged in water was slim. More promising was the analysis of the degradation patterns, the specific types of sediment clinging to the material, and crucially, the presence and species of algae growth. These details could provide vital clues regarding the duration of their submersion and the precise conditions of their resting place within the lagoon. Simultaneously, the Frontier Trail Lagoon became the focal point of a renewed physical investigation. Dive teams, equipped with advanced sonar, systematically mapped the murky depths, searching for any further anomalies or, grimly, human remains. Specialized dredging equipment was brought in to sift through layers of accumulated silt and organic debris, a painstaking process designed to uncover anything the water had held secret for 22 years. Every pump inlet, every bank erosion, and every submerged structure was reevaluated, with the chilling understanding that this was the most probable final location of the missing brothers. To reconstruct the environment of 1995, investigators sought out individuals who possessed intimate knowledge of Cedar Point's operations during that specific period. Lonnie Kraft, who had served as a seasonal security guard at Cedar Point in 1995, was among the first to be re-interviewed. His recollections of patrol routes, crowd management protocols during Halloween, and the general security landscape around the service path and the Frontier Trail offered a crucial historical perspective. Could he recall any specific vulnerabilities or unusual occurrences near the lagoon? Ava Kohler, a ride mechanic from the same era, provided a different, yet equally valuable, insight. Her expertise lay in the park's complex mechanical and water systems, including the pumps and filtration mechanisms of the lagoon. She could detail any temporary structures, maintenance schedules, or alterations to the water bodies that might have been in place that autumn. Chad Nicosia, a former lifeguard at Cedar Point who had since become a paramedic, offered his perspective on water safety, potential hazards within the park's aquatic features, and the emergency response procedures of the mid-1990s. His professional eye could assess the risks the lagoon might have posed to unsuspecting children. As these testimonies were gathered and the forensic analysis progressed, initial theories began to coalesce. The presence of the wristbands in the lagoon, so close to the service path the boys had intended to take, strongly suggested a tragic accident involving the water. The new investigation now focused on a central question. How did a shortcut through a service path lead 2 young boys into the depths of the Frontier Trail Lagoon? The answer, investigators believed, lay hidden in the overlooked details of Cedar Point's infrastructure and operations from that fateful autumn. The meticulous forensic analysis of the wristbands, initially focused on basic identification, soon yielded a crucial, unexpected detail. Microscopic examination revealed a specific type of algae growth matted into the fibers and plastic of the bands. Experts determined this particular algae species thrived under conditions consistent with prolonged submersion, but more significantly, its growth pattern indicated exposure to a single, distinct off-season drain cycle of the lagoon. This singular event provided a vital chronological anchor, suggesting the wristbands had settled into the lagoon sometime before or during the first major draining and refilling operation after the 1995 season, and had remained undisturbed until their discovery. This narrowed the window for their entry into the water, solidifying the connection to the brothers' disappearance. Armed with this new timeline, investigators returned to Cedar Point's sprawling archives, initiating a painstaking review of maintenance logs from 1995 and the following year. This was a monumental task, sifting through hundreds of pages detailing everything from ride repairs to landscape work. The search was for any records pertaining to the Frontier Trail Lagoon's water levels, structural changes, or unusual operations during the autumn of 1995. The breakthrough came buried within a stack of engineering reports, documentation of a temporary spillway constructed in the Frontier Trail area during the Halloweekends of 1995. Its purpose was to divert excess water during a specific, short-term maintenance project on an adjacent water feature, an operation that required temporary alterations to the lagoon's usual water flow and containment. This temporary spillway, investigators learned, was positioned a direct line with the service path the Pike brothers were known to have taken. Further review of security schedules from that period revealed a critical oversight. The area around this temporary structure, being outside the main guest pathways and considered a maintenance zone, fell within a midnight security gap. During specific late night and early morning hours, particularly when crowds had thinned after Halloweekend's operating hours, this section of the park was subject to less frequent patrols or even temporary unmonitoring. The temporary spillway combined with the unmonitored period created an unforeseen conduit. The pieces began to fall into place, forming a coherent, tragic narrative. The brothers, seeking their shortcut in the dimming light, would have encountered this temporary spillway. In the confusion of the unfamiliar, unlit path and the altered landscape, they likely mistook the structure for part of their intended route, inadvertently following it directly into the lagoon. The accounts from Lonnie Kraft, the seasonal guard, recalling the stretched security resources during Halloweekends, and Ava Kohler, the ride mechanic, confirming the ad hoc nature of such temporary water diversions, lent further weight to this reconstruction. Chad Nicosia, the former lifeguard, underscored the unexpected dangers such an altered environment could pose, particularly to children navigating in low visibility. The lagoon, it seemed, had not been a place of abduction, but a silent witness to a tragic, unseen accident, a fatal confluence of circumstance and youthful misadventure. The convergence of forensic evidence and historical park records led investigators to a singular, heartbreaking conclusion. The Pike brothers, in their innocent pursuit of a shortcut, had inadvertently stumbled upon a fatal confluence of circumstances. The temporary spillway, erected for maintenance during the 1995 Halloweekends, had created an unforeseen and hazardous path directly from the service trail into the murky waters of the Frontier Trail Lagoon. Compounded by the midnight security gap, a period of reduced monitoring in that specific, non-public area, the boys, likely disoriented in the dimming light or darkness, had walked unknowingly into the water. Their small bodies, quickly succumbing to the cold and depth, would have settled into the thick silt at the bottom of the lagoon, remaining undisturbed for over 2 decades until the wristbands, dislodged by currents or maintenance activities, finally surfaced. This reconstruction of events pointed unequivocally to a tragic accident. The decades-long specter of abduction or foul play was finally laid to rest, replaced by the equally devastating truth of an unforeseen environmental hazard. While the outcome remained profoundly sorrowful, the absence of malice offered a different kind of closure. For the Pike family, the revelation brought a bittersweet, agonizing understanding. The unbearable weight of the unknown, of the endless what-ifs, was at last lifted. There was no joy in the explanation, only the profound sadness of knowing how their beloved children had perished, but also the peace that comes with truth, allowing them to finally grieve without the torment of uncertainty. In the wake of the discovery and the subsequent findings, Cedar Point initiated a comprehensive review of its safety protocols and infrastructure. The Pike brothers' case highlighted a critical, previously unaddressed vulnerability. All temporary structures near water bodies were subsequently subjected to rigorous safety assessments and enhanced security measures. Permanent fencing and lighting were installed along service paths and maintenance zones, particularly those adjacent to lagoons and waterways, to prevent any inadvertent access. Maintenance logs and security patrol schedules were cross-referenced with greater scrutiny to identify and eliminate potential gaps in coverage, ensuring no similar confluence of circumstances could recur. Rowan Pike and his younger brother, once remembered primarily as the subjects of a baffling cold case, were now understood as victims of a tragic, yet ultimately explained, accident. Their final, unwitting adventure had exposed a critical flaw in a vast, complex system, leading to significant changes that would undoubtedly enhance the safety of future park visitors. Though their lives were cut short, their story became a poignant reminder of the unseen dangers that can lurk even in places designed for joy. After 22 years of agonizing questions, the lagoon had finally relinquished its secret, offering a measure of peace to a family and a community that had long sought answers.